I've decided to learn Blender, a free open source 3D modelling software which allows you to create a whole range of things, the things which people post online that make me go, wow, I want to be able to do that. Before I embark on this long and arduous journey, here is a bit of context. I am what could be considered a traditional artist. I mostly draw with pencil on paper, and for many years now, I've been making drawing tutorials and posting videos on YouTube. I am a complete beginner when it comes to Blender, but my intention with this series is to document my learnings and development in the hopes that what I share might also be useful to others. Oh, and for those who are new to this channel, this is Boxman. He'll be showing up in these videos once in a while. In fact, I've set myself a goal. By the end of this video, I want to have created a 3D model of Boxman. I might even have a go at producing some animations, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So I've installed the most recent version of Blender and started a new project. Oh, look at that. I already have Boxman's head done. Now there are plenty of great beginner Blender tutorials on YouTube, and so I began to look for one. A tutorial which was relevant to what I wanted to do. And so after searching for a while, I eventually came across this, a beginner isometric room tutorial by Polygon Runway. I often use a lot of images from the Simpsons in my videos, and so I assumed it would be quite fitting. I also just love the style of this, how smooth and simple it looks. And to my surprise, it was a fairly easy tutorial to follow. Although I have to say that the amount of shortcuts there are for all of these tools can be a little overwhelming.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
Throughout this process, I learned a lot of basic modelling techniques and soon became familiar with Blender's interface, at least the layout section. It wasn't long before I was able to edit simple meshes such as cubes and cylinders to create various items, tabbing in and out of edit and object mode. There were also a few modifiers I used, such as the bevel modifier. This was used in addition with the shade smooth option to get that smooth, rounded look. Now, when it comes to tutorials like this one, I like to follow along and learn as much as I can, and then try to apply what I learn to produce something myself. And so, eventually, as my confidence began to increase, I decided to take this a step further by extending this living room so that I could model in the table at the side of the couch. At this point, I also brought up some reference images of the Simpsons living room so that I had a better idea of how all of this was supposed to look. And I did spend a lot of time modelling this, but it was all good practice. I found it to be like a puzzle, trying to figure out what would be the best mesh to start with and how I could edit them to create these different things. I really like how this TV turned out. I spent a very long time trying to figure out how I could create a bulge in the middle of a surface like this. It turned out that I needed to turn on proportional editing and then push this out. I was mostly using the extrude and inset tool to do a lot of this. When editing a mesh, you have 3 selection modes, being vertices, edges and faces. It's surprising how little you need to know to be able to do things like this. Each time I got stuck or wanted to know how to do something, I'd search it up on Google and in most cases find an answer. Once I had everything modelled in, I continued with the tutorial I started with to learn how to add some colour. In retrospect, now that I have a better understanding of how colour and materials work, it's starting to make sense, but when I first clicked on that material icon and saw all of this, I didn't know where to start.
Oh no.
Thankfully, this example only required me to add a base colour to each of these objects, and so there wasn't much to think about, at least until I wanted to add 2 colours to one object and realised that you had to assign the colour to part of the mesh. And then I finished the tutorial, learning how to set up a camera and add some lighting. But I didn't stop there. I enjoyed doing this so much that I forgot that my main goal was to create a model of Boxman, and instead I decided to create a model of a Duff beer can, from The Simpsons of course. To do this, I followed a quick 1-minute tutorial. I also imported an image texture, which was the label for a Duff beer can. This was the first time that I had clicked on the UV editing tab. Here I unrolled the mesh that I had made and positioned this on my object. I made a few adjustments until I had this right, and then copied my model to then drop it back into the Simpsons living room. I scaled this down and placed it at the side of the couch. I then duplicated this a few times, rotating these cans around, along with editing the mesh so that one looked as if it had been finished and then crumpled up. The idea behind this is that this was now going to be the Simpsons living room, but later at night after Homer had been drinking and then he'd gone to bed and forgot to turn the TV off. Now, once I had this idea, the first thing I realised is that I had to change how I was lighting this scene. I was playing around with this for almost an hour until I had something that looked like what I imagined, and finally I was ready to click render. Let me know what you guys think about this. I am really proud of it. I certainly learnt a lot from doing it. In terms of time, this had taken me around 12 hours to finish, but a lot of that time was spent watching tutorials and figuring things out. At this point, I was ready for my next project, Boxman. So creating a model of Boxman was as easy as you might have expected. I was adding in a series of cubes and scaling them to be at a suitable size. The priority for me was trying to create a texture for this model. To do this, I decided to create a pencil texture by hand and then import this in as an image texture. In addition to this, I also found another tutorial online which showed me how to create a procedural paper material within the shading section. This involved using a selection of nodes and then changing their values to produce a pattern which looks like paper. I'm explaining this process with confidence, but honestly, I just copied what was shown in the video. I realised that this shading section and the geometry nodes section of Blender is a stone I wanted to leave unturned for now. What I liked about this though is that I also added my pencil texture over the top, and when this was paired with the displacement node, which gave the texture some depth, a three-dimensional effect I suppose, this looked really cool. Now throughout this process I experimented with different ways of adding an outline around Boxman. The most popular option that I found through watching more tutorials is to use the grease pencil tool along with a line art modifier, and although I had gotten some promising results, it didn't work as well as I expected. It's something that I'm going to have to revisit. For now I decided to continue without an outline. When it came to adding in his eyes, I subdivided this front face and then extruded inwards some sections. I applied the same texture here, but made it lighter. For the pupils and the eyebrows, I modelled these in as a separate mesh and I applied the same texture, but also made these black. Finally, I had a model of Boxman. I guess you could say that I was successful in reaching my goal. At this stage, this model of Boxman is what I had set out to do, but, well, I had greater ambitions. The reason why I want to learn Blender is to be able to create some animations that I can use in my videos. I assumed at the start that I wouldn't have been ready to animate anything for a while, but as I stared at that lifeless model of Boxman, I realised what I had to do, and so I watched more tutorials.
Holy shit. Hey, Mikey, I think he likes it. How about some more? Hell yes.
So we all know that Boxman looks almost identical to a character from Minecraft, and I am actually grateful for that because there are a ton of Minecraft animations that have already been made. I even think most of them are made in Blender. And so I came to this conclusion that all I had to do was figure out how to animate a Minecraft character myself and then simply apply the same methods to Boxman. Thankfully, there's many tools out there which makes doing that easier, such as pre-made rigs. For example, here is one that I found online, free to download and use. To animate a character in Blender, you firstly need to rig the character. And when you do this, you are essentially creating a skeleton that is placed into the model. This involves what are referred to as bones, which link to sections of the model, such as the arm, allowing it to move as expected. I'm not an animator, and that was likely the worst explanation you ever heard, because if it wasn't clear already, then yeah, there is a lot to it, and rigging a character can be quite complicated. The next step was to apply this rig to my model of Boxman here, or vice versa. It was a rather lengthy process to do this, but I eventually figured it out, and as you can see, this rig comes with this panel that allows you to control various features. If I move a section of his body, you can see that other sections move to suit. It's very clever stuff. For me to try and produce something similar when this already exists would be a lot of time wasted. But now I was ready to start animating. How do you do that? I found a person on YouTube called Woodplank who has a great series on how to create a Minecraft animation from start to finish. In one of his videos, he gives a brief introduction to keyframe animation, and through following along, I was able to understand how to animate an object. It's actually quite simple. Set a keyframe, move forwards in the timeline, move your object, set another keyframe, and repeat. Following another tutorial, I started with a simple walk cycle, and soon I had Boxman walking across the screen. I was making progress, but it takes a long time to do this. It's a very tedious process, and I was constantly playing this back and then making adjustments to try and have these movements look natural. Once I had near enough finished my animation, I added some lighting and a background. Nothing special, just a simple white plane at this stage. Also, lighting is an important subject in itself. I need to learn a lot more about how to set up good lighting. I did play around with this though, and I animated the lights so that they changed colour. I wasn't expecting a great animation, it was all simply good practice. Anyways, here is the final result. So there we have it. Let me know what you think of that, and if you enjoyed this video, let me know, because I am going to be learning how to do a lot more in Blender. These progress docs are a way for me to share my progress with you. Also, expect to see some animations in my videos now. I'm very excited to create more now, but anyways, watch this space, people, because me and Boxman are gonna be making some stuff. I don't know.
Turn it up!